everybody. Welcome to the stream. Hope you're doing great. Hope I'm sounding okay. Let's make sure our mic is picking up. And yes, it looks like everything is good to go. All right, we're back today and we're going to be continuing our work on this fun guy here, this whimsical, cheerful fellow, the Lord of the Pit from Magic the Gathering's olden days. And I was able to make a little bit of progress off stream. This is just one of those projects that is just time consuming. So doing it just on stream, it would just take too long. So I'm trying to noodle a little bit when I can. I do have a lot of things going on, but trying to get to it in between other things happening. And so we were able to get all of these hands up here fully resolved, which I'm really happy with the results on how this hand turned out. So we got some really fun details happening there. Those nails looking real crazy and gnarly there up on the top. Some fun little fused flesh happening. And I was able to get this connecting arm, if we can call it an arm, figured out. So that also is looking pretty good. And I was able to get some work done on the torso here, the rib cage area. Started to clean up some of this sternum section. I've switched to a different mat cap since last time you saw this. We're using a monster clay mat cap, which I've been enjoying. It's just a little darker. I think this highlights a little brighter. But I don't know. I tend to kind of switch around on mat cap, so I don't know that we'll stick with this the entire time we're working. But this is just one I've been kind of grooving with recently. And I was doing some work on the arm here and also started doing some work on the hand. And that kind of brings us to the subject of this stream, which will be getting this hand fully completed, which has this cool like eyeball in the palm. And then once we finish the hand, I'll probably want to go over to some of this area back here. I have it feeling pretty good overall, but like this section of the back that we will see exposed, and maybe some of the waist area here, and maybe working a little bit also on some of this detail in here, maybe the pelvic region. So we'll see where we get with it. I don't know, but I know that the hands are off to a good start, so we're not starting from ground zero with those. So with that all being said, let's jump into it. I hope you're doing something fun and creative on your end. And if you are, remember to save often. All right, let's do this. And I guess if you're new here, well, welcome in. Happy to have you. I try to do one of these every week whenever time permits. And I try to be just kind of like a chill, creative background stream. It's oftentimes when I'm working on creative stuff, I like to have something creative on in the background, whether it's somebody streaming some cool art or it's a like a YouTube video of some creative thing, or it might be a movie of some kind or a show. I don't ever usually work in complete silence. It's just it would kind of like make me an anxious person. Also, because I don't like to be distracted by unintended noises. So if you have some of your own noises to focus on, then that tends to make getting in the zone a little bit easier. I mean, there's like noise canceling headphones and things like that that are great tools, and I have used those in the past, but sometimes just drowning it out with your own inspirational material is the best strategy there. You would think that I would be into podcasts because podcasts are just an audio consumption thing, and since I'm working on visuals, you would think, oh well, that's the perfect pairing, or music, and I do listen to music often, but podcasts I don't. And I think part of it is because um, just pure dialogue is boring to me. As interesting as the conversation might be, I just feel like it makes me feel like I'm trapped in an elevator and I have to listen to somebody. But if I'm like seeing them, right, there's something different about seeing them. I guess when you're trapped in an elevator, you are physically with somebody, so I guess that's a little different. But yeah, just I feel a little bit less confined and claustrophobic with like a vlog or a video podcast than something that's just audio content. It also feels a little impersonal. I mean, it's something that like I've thought about doing podcasts before as well, and if I ever considered doing something like that, it would always be with a video component. I would never do just pure audio. I just think that that's subpar content. And that's just one opinion in a sea of many. But yeah, I don't really do podcasts for that reason. And a lot of times I just put on my favorite movies in the background. Hey, Zane, welcome, sir. Yes, thank you. And happy Thanksgiving to you as well. I hope you were able to eat way too many calories today, as all Americans should be doing today. And just don't give a crap about it for one day of your life, right? Just indulge. What's your favorite Thanksgiving dish? You got a favorite in the mix, or hard to choose maybe? I know I've got a few favorites of my own. What is that? US? I don't know. It might be there's an emoji missing on my screen over here. Is that like a USA flag? Oh, the charcuterie? Nice. Yeah, yeah. That's a classic one. Yeah, I like those oh gosh, what is it? Like the is it Borsen? Boursin, those like those herbal cheeses and stuff. Man, those things are delicious. It's one of those things you could definitely like fill up on the appetizers before the main course, right? Like it's the dreaded basket of chips on the table before the meal syndrome. I think that might be an American thing though. So here I'm just kind of trying to get the volumes to feel like they're tapering well, and we don't have any kind of weird crookedness that is unintended. I mean, it's probably fine if this guy's crooked fingers are a little crooked. He's a twisted demon type character, but we don't want to have anything that's like not designed. So it's yes, that's the perfect way to put it. Yeah, that is that is another deadly pre-meal temptation, isn't it? Those freaking unlimited breadsticks. They're glorious. So we might, let's see, I got to get in here. Now we're working with a little bit of a resolution limitation on some of this stuff in here because, yeah, I mean, it's just a small feature, and I'm not subdividing it anymore yet. I mean, we could like, and we will eventually do some hyper detailing with like the sculptress on, where it's going to do like some selective tessellation in some areas and stuff. Um, but I'm like a weirdly kind of process oriented person, so I kind of want to just try to maximize what we can do with the resolution here before we start just getting wacky with stuff. That to me, just when I get disorganized, I start to feel like I kind of lose sense of what I've worked on and what I haven't. And, with this being just a personal project, I'm not feeling like I have to do any sort of shortcutting and and maybe any sort of compromises to the process that I love because of time reasons. So I'm just going to kind of do this methodically here. Let's get a little more definition in these little finger folds. And I think it's probably that we could bring in a little bit more subtle details at a later stage. Like there's obviously little secondary wrinkles that happen around this bend that can be nice, but we just are a little limited on resolution right now for some of that. I'll just throw a couple quick lines in just so that we know we want to do that, but don't know that we really have enough to work with yet to get exactly what we're after there. Oops. Oh, and by the way, you might have seen me doing some weird stuff to the fingertip here. I was using H polish to kind of bash that into a shape I like. That's something that's a little bit of a hack, but if you're getting some weird topology at the end point of something, like the things are sort of converging in a way that's creating a point where you don't want it, you can use H polish to kind of selectively flatten some areas. And that can help. I mean, there's other tools as well that can work, but if you're doing something organic and it doesn't have to feel like mechanically precise, I find that flatten or H polish can work. In addition to maybe just going into a lower sub D and just hitting the smooth on it a little bit. But sometimes you just got to kind of work around a few of those little awkward areas of the topology. And it's where those too many polygons are coming into a weird point is where you tend to get those issues popping up. It's funny to think about topology when you're in a program like ZBrush that feels like it gives you access to unlimited polygons, but the flow of the polygons still is affecting how you can sculpt this mesh. Maybe even if it's just in subtle ways. I mean, that's the whole reason why we only took the Dynamesh so far and then we Z remeshed to give ourselves a nicer base model. And also because we'll use the lowest sub D of this version as the model in Unreal, right? The low poly model. So like you can see this one here, the flow of the topology is dense, but low enough to where we could actually use this as the cinematic model in Unreal, just given how well it pushes polygons these days. And what's cool about this is that there's just a ton of nice topology in here. So if you were to try to like animate these things to rig the limbs to all the various bones of the skeleton, that you have plenty of topology here to work with. It's the kind of one little optimization when you're doing cinematic models, is that you can kind of get away with like denser models, and you may not have to like manually retopo everything. But of course, if you're going to do like an in-game optimized model and poly counts have to be lower, then you're going to end up having to like manually do a lot of that. And that's not to say that manually doing retopo even for a cinematic model isn't something you can benefit from. It absolutely can, but it's not something that I think we're going to need for this particular project. So that's a cool little shortcut. So now I want to start to explore where these fingers are going to turn into fingernails. So I might just kind of create a little transition line there. Let's kind of bend that up here like this. And wow, that really curves, doesn't it? Always be kind of looking for those spiraling topologies where the inner side of the finger doesn't really relate to what the outer side is doing. Like if this knuckle feels like it's sort of misaligned with where the bend is in the finger, which it does right now, you've got to be careful about that. So let's get that a little bit adjusted there. If you're having trouble seeing it, you can also just, let's go to our select lasso, and we can just isolate this finger, and then we can do a nice sort of side view of this here, and we can just see, okay, where is our bend happening? Where's our knuckle? And we can then come in here and we can even optimize a little bit of the thicknesses if we feel like it's getting a little kind of chunky on us. We can pull down that bend. We might adjust the knuckle up a little bit. Let's go to this side, do the same thing. And what you'll notice is that it is very helpful for me to isolate the finger in order to see it. Otherwise, these other fingers would have been in the way. So the masking and visibility tools in ZBrush are a huge advantage you have over traditional sculpting, and so take advantage of those things. You miss ZBrush. It's such a great program. You've been curious to try Monster Clay as a little fun traditional way of getting back into it. Yeah, Monster Clay is awesome. It's definitely one of the most popular clays out there for traditional sculpting in entertainment. And that one of the main reasons is because it's a sulfurless clay. So if you want to cast from it, the clay, the sulfur that might have been in the clay, which would have messed with your mold making, will not have any issues when you're using monster clay. Um, I'm actually allergic to sulfur, so I'm glad that it exists for that reason. I remember in college I had a sculpting class and traditional sculpting with clay, and one of the assignments was to sculpt a bust of one of your classmates, and this is before I knew I had a sulfur allergy. um, and luckily it's not one of those like systemic like anaphylaxis sort of things. It's more like it gives me a headache, it makes my eyes bloodshot. But I was like working on this sculpture one night, and I like went to use the restroom and looked in the mirror, and like my eye, like the whites of my eyes were like gone. It was like just pure red. And then I started getting a headache, and I was like, what in the heck is going on? And then eventually I realized it was the sulfur in the clay. Because, sulfur is like a gas, right? It's like you got your head in front of this clay, and it's just off gassing into your face the whole time. Anyway, so for me, monster clay is great for that reason. But there's other stuff out there too that's not sulfurous, like, like Sculpey is a good option there. But Sculpey is, that's a polymer clay, and so that's a different sort of a completely different feel. Um, that's not something that you would see often used for maquette work in the entertainment field, um, because it's intended to be baked, right? It's intended to be cured into a hard form. and it's also like it takes a time for you to get it warmed up and moldable in your hands, which is kind of a little bit of an annoyance. So that's why oil clay is so popular, because the whole the key sort of rule governing mold making and casting is that you go from hard to soft or vice versa, right? You can never do a hard cast off of a hard sculpt. Um, so you do like a oil based clay maquette, which is a soft sculpt, and then you do a hard cast off of it, and then you cast something in the hard cast that is soft, like silicone or whatever. So you're always changing from hard to soft. That's the basic rule. And so that's why you obviously wouldn't do like a baked polymer clay maquette and then try to mold off of that, because that would be going from hard to hard, and that would not go well. But when you're working with oil clay, like monster clay, some little tricks that might help you out is if you get a little tiny mini crock pot and you set it on like its lowest setting, you just stick your block of clay in there, and what it does is it makes it super malleable, not liquidy. It just makes it soft, and then you can just grab and pull pieces, and you're sort of just popping all kinds of big forms in quickly to make a gesture of a figure or whatever you're working on, without having to kind of like take pieces and like mold them and push them and soften them. You want to be really impulsive and kind of work almost like the oil clay is paint, or like you're finger painting. And that's a pro tip that I picked up from just a lot of people that do a lot more sculpting than me. So try that out if you're going to get into monster clay, and you can pick up a tiny little mini crock pot for super cheap, even secondhand. You could look on eBay, or um, maybe even you could find it in like a swap meet, or like a Goodwill or something like that. So not too cost prohibitive there, and it's just a really nice tool. Then the other thing that can be helpful is to invest in a an alcohol torch. And that sounds like really dangerous, but it isn't if you just know how to use it. And what an alcohol torch does is it allows you to melt the surface of the clay in selective areas, which is basically going to get rid of any surface imperfections that are difficult to get rid of manually. In ZBrush, we have the advantage of being able to just smooth the clay. We just hold shift and magically everything's soft. But with physical clay, one of the advantages is that you get a lot of texture, but sometimes that works against you and you don't want any texture. So an alcohol torch, you just hit it with the flame and it melts the outside surface, and it's as if you're using the smooth tool in ZBrush. And then the other one that you complement that with is a can of compressed air. If you hold it upside down and shoot it, it will basically blast freezing cold air onto the surface. So you can basically melt and smooth and then solidify in a second, which is also really helpful. So really, like, if you want to get into it, get yourself a big tub of monster clay, get a tiny crock pot, an alcohol torch, and a can of compressed air, and you can do so much with that. It's great. And remember to use like an armature if you're going to build up something that has structure to it. It's always good to have a base. You don't want to be working on something and then it becomes flimsy or unstable on you. That's like a real a real buzzkill. Yeah, so not all oil clay has sulfur. It's something that they put in the clay to affect its texture. And sulfured clay does feel amazing. It's there's a certain butteriness to it that is really unmatched, but unfortunately, it's just, yeah. For me, I can't use it, and model makers who need to cast from it are not going to be able to use that either. So they make non-sulfured clay for that reason. And then there's of course wed clay, which is water-based clay that dries in air, and that's another one that is popular, but that one makes me nervous because there's you got to deal with air drying and air getting to your piece, and it's not very forgiving. I would say maybe maybe go with oil clay over wet clay for conceptual work. And the point of the wet clay is wet clay dries hard, so that's a situation where like if you want to cast something off the wet clay that's soft, then you'd use wet clay versus oil clay, right? Again, that hard to soft sort of rule to it. Yeah, it's fun stuff. Yeah, here I'm going to use a fun trick. We'll go ahead and mask off the intersection of the nail here, and we've got the shape defined, but I want more depth to it. So I'm just going to hold control and mask this section. We'll control tap to invert. Let's go to our move tool. I'm going to turn off these wings because they're really distracting me right now. There we go. And from a side view, we can, mostly side view, I can just kind of pull this up and in, which will just give us a lot more depth than if we tried to continually just, use a clay brush to push this in. We could, but I like the move tool for things like this. And I'm going to limit how far we go in because I don't want it to get too brittle. If I were to 3D print this, I don't want to get anything that's going to be difficult to maintain its integrity if it gets turned into a physical medium. And maybe we'll do a little pinch on this edge here. Let's see if we can get something interesting happening with it. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, nice. So kind of a gnarly, curled looking nail there. We'll point it a little bit more, make it feel dangerous. Hey, Cirrus Dina. Sorry, that's a that's a tricky one for me to say. Happy Thanksgiving. Yeah, thanks for dropping by. Hope you had something tasty. Good thing Black Friday is tomorrow. You have the most tool. Yeah, yeah. I have. Yeah, my Amazon wish list is a scary place to visit, as way too many things in there, and I think Black Friday will be a good one to just kind of hop in there and see if I can maybe snag something that I've been wanting to get. I was thinking about. I mean, you guys maybe you've seen. I'm doing like product reviews and stuff on the channel as well, like short form content stuff. And I was thinking about, does it make sense to do like a 2025 holiday gift guide for artists kind of thing? And I know a lot of people are probably doing that. I would like to think that I might have some nice suggestions, but I think I might have just missed the boat on that. Like, I think, is it, you guys maybe you can let me know. Do you feel like it's too late to do a video like that? Has everybody already sort of done all their Christmas shopping and stuff? I know that I haven't, but I think I'm also kind of bad about managing that stuff. So, it's I think if it's not that's one of those videos that has to be timed well, otherwise it kind of becomes pointless. That'd be cool. Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, if people feel like that might still be interesting, then I'm definitely down to do that. It's not going to be an exhaustive list. It'll just be kind of like a, like top 10 things that would be, worth looking at for buying for an artist in your life or buying for yourself if you're the artist, right? I'll try to put a variety in there. I'll probably put some books in there, a couple anatomy books that I like, a couple drawing tools, maybe some tech stuff. Okay, yeah, you think I have a little bit of time with that? Because if I do, then I think I could probably put that together probably next week. Got something coming up next Wednesday, but I think if I can get it done before Wednesday, I think we'll be good. So, all right, I think I might have noodled on this fingernail enough here. I do want to put on maybe some striations in the nail itself, just get a little bit of fun detail in here. Oh yeah, there we go. That's nice. And maybe we get some bony contouring here. Could be kind of interesting. Let's see what we can do. It's kind of what's fun about doing like a gnarly creature sculpt versus doing like a, maybe like a human, or like a youthful heroic human where you might be careful about having too many weird, gritty, funky organic details. Is that we can lean into having some of these forms feel really bold. Yeah, it's like if you look at your own nail, it's like, yeah, there's maybe some interesting stuff going on, but at the end of your finger's kind of boring unless you have like some really fancy nails or something. So trying to find opportunities to kind of give this some interesting shapes. Let's make it a little more fun than your average finger. That's kind of what's cool about sculpting is that you are getting in here and like hyper defining all these nuanced areas that in an illustration, you just might not worry about this unless it was an illustration with his hand reaching into the camera or something. Yeah, you don't think a lot of people have bought gifts yet? Yeah, I mean, that was my sense, but I just, again, like, I don't feel like I can trust myself to know the average consumer well enough. But I think I know artists pretty well, so maybe that's working in my favor. Okay, so I think what we did is we made it a little too thin at the base. I'm just kind of make it a little thicker down here. Yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. So that finger is feeling pretty reasonable. I think we maybe made the bone a little crooked, so let's fix that. Let's get some definition on this inner side. Hey, Tomislav, how's it going, dude? And good morning to you. I think yeah, it's early over there for you, but late over here for me. But this is actually my normal time for streaming. I was streaming a little earlier these last couple weeks because of my schedule was a little different. But today we're in the typical time slot, which has been nice. So it's good to see you, man. Okay, let's see. We got that going on there. I guess we can probably. I'm just gonna tweak the thickness of this bone here. It's feeling a little kind of thin. It's kind of bugging me a little bit. So, and then this knuckle maybe wants to get a little modified here. This is what happens is I always say like, oh, well, we're just going to work on the hand and that shouldn't take that long. And then here we are noodling the heck out of this thing. I think it's safe for us to move on to. I don't know why I picked that finger first. Like, that's such a weird choice, right? Like, it's not even, it's like in the middle. This is how my brain works, I guess. Okay, so let's go to this pinky finger now so that way at least it'll look as though we were organized in our approach. Guess we can start here again with the nail definition. So this one, maybe we cut it like right here. Looks good. Let's go here. And then I might also just isolate our view of this finger. I'm going to go down to the knuckle on this one. But yeah, I guess going back to the topic about the traditional clay, I mean, traditional arts are like definitely going to see increasing interest because of all of the fatigue of all the AI crud, right? I think people just want that authentic experience, and traditional is like just an easy way to like cut through the noise. And the good thing is like you guys, I think most of the people on my channel are people from the school that I teach at. You know, you guys are investing in like understanding the core skills that are important to artists, and I mean, you'd be just a complete mess working traditionally if you didn't understand that stuff, right? Talk about needing foundational knowledge. Traditional will definitely reveal those gaps very, very quickly, which is why I say you should definitely have it be part of your process, even if you do intend to work digitally. But ZBrush is awesome though. Like the convenience of digital is nice because it can get you doing art maybe more often than you would if you only could do traditional, because traditional is just kind of, unless you're just doodling in a sketchbook, which is pretty convenient. It tends to require a little bit more setup, planning, you know, tools and the location and things. It's just a little bit fussier. So it's good to have it in there, but digital can be a pretty convenient thing. I know a lot of my students, they do at least the initial stages of the image on their iPad with like Procreate, and it's like, yeah, go for it. Like that's super convenient. You could be, you know, in your living room on the couch watching, catching up on your favorite show while you're brainstorming the next illustration or something. It's really great. But I think that's also, you know, my tool reviews are all focused on traditional tools because I just see there's increasing relevance for that sort of focus on the craft and the foundational skills and the human made component. Like people sort of rejecting this sort of digital um, slop, and there's some trends in that space that I think people are getting a little fatigued by. So I think everybody wants that break from the internet, and I think yeah, having some traditional tools that you like using is a really awesome way to give yourself a break from that. Thanks for the compliment, Tom. Yeah, this is the plan for this is to throw this in Substance and then in Unreal, and then if I can connect with a friend who's a rigger animator. Um, might do like a short little cinematic thing of just him kind of walking around with some effects or something, maybe flying or taking off. Um, so I'll try to do a little kind of mini pipeline featurette, and I'll just see if how much of the process I can show on the channel. If you guys are interested in that stuff, I'm definitely happy to jump in there. I'll have to brush off a little bit of my a lot of the dust for me in Substance because I haven't gone in there in a while and done anything too involved. But maybe I'll just catch myself up before the stream, and then that way when I get on here, we can just you know get in there guns blazing and make it look cool. But yeah, that's the plan for this guy. Again, this is Lord of the Pit from Magic: The Gathering Alpha set. So an old school classic. You feel yourself going back to traditional more. Oh, you got some Posca markers. Yeah, Poscas are awesome. I got introduced to Posca when I was just looking for white pens, like white opaque, uh, basically like white out on top of whatever I was doing, inks or washes or whatever. And then I realized like these are kind of good for any coloring. And so then I expanded into the metallic range. And so I love like Posca gold and silver as an accent as well. And then I ended up finding a set of fine tip metallic Poscas in metallics other than gold and silver, blue and pink and red and stuff. They're really cool. Big fan of Poscas. That actually, you know what? That's a good. I should write that down. That's a good gift suggestion in the gift guide. You guys are giving me ideas. Let's see. Gift guide. I have to write this down on my clipboard here. Gift guide, Poscas. Because that's a good, I think that's a great artist gift as a little set of Posca pens. They're also like non toxic, which is nice. Like if you want to gift them to maybe somebody a little younger, it's not as concerning. You like drawing traditionally because you always have this pressure of making things look pretty when you're working digitally. Yeah, digital because of the precision, right? Like you can zoom in infinitely and you can sort of over obsess about everything. I mean, you could see what we're doing here. Like we're just getting into like these crazy little details and stuff, which is part of what I like, but I don't want to be doing it. I don't want to be operating in this mode 100% of the time. I like to just, like you said, know that this is my 8.5 by 11 A4 sheet of paper, and there's only so much I can do with this. So, and then when I've put the lines down and I've made some choices, that's just how it's going to be. And if it's not working out, then we just move on, and that's really refreshing. Alcohol markers, yep, those are also really great. Yeah, sketchbooks. I actually do have a couple of those that I'm going to recommend. I have two different kinds that have different paper types that I think would probably at least one of them might be appropriate for whatever people are doing. Technically, I probably should have three sketchbooks in the list to be covering all bases, but I don't know that I have. I don't know that I have enough experience with all of them to give that recommendation, but there's certainly two of them that I think I could safely say are pretty good choices. Now, the funny thing is that I personally tend to not be much of a sketchbook person. I'm more of like a loose sheet sketch clipboard sort of person, but I guess that's something I could maybe talk about in a video. That could be a short form video of its own. Is just the psychology of a sketchbook because that that messes with people sometimes. It certainly messes with me, and that's why I'm. Well, it's actually for me, it's a combination of the psychology and also the ergonomics. I find both of those things a little bit challenging about a sketchbook. So so I tend to go with loose sheets. I just have like a um This is just a clipboard I've got at my desk here, and it's just loaded with loose leaf paper. Um, it's got a flip closure to it. So, if you happen to be caught outside in the rain or something, you're fine there. And yeah, it's a nice clipboard. They're cheap too. I get them on Amazon for I think they're like $20 or something. So I usually have like two or three of those floating around my house in my bag in a bunch of loose leaf paper. And yeah, loose leaf paper is there's also lots of options there too. Are we really at high? Yeah, I really wish I had a little more res to work with in here, but that's fine. We're gonna go higher res later. Getting a little lumpy and bumpy in here. It's not it's not terrible, but I don't want it to get too weird. Okay, let's now here you can see when I smooth this, you'll see that we get a little bit of a point there, and that's because if we look at the topology, you'll see here's a corner where everything comes together, and that's an issue. So we can try. Do I have flatten in my? I think I just opted for high H polish here, so you can just hit that corner with a little H polish, and it kind of stamps it down, and you don't really notice it. Same effect with flatten. They're both basically the same. Just H polish um, is it respects multiple angles, whereas flatten is just sort of projecting from one side. So like if we were to H polish along this edge here, it would sort of try to find like kind of like a planar transition between top and side, whereas flatten would create like a brand new side here. It depends on kind of where your angle's at with it. Um, but like you can see that's kind of H polish. They're really similar, to be honest with you. H polish and flatten are pretty similar, but H polish I find to just give you a little more nuance, a little more control. Flatten is like the sort of brutish, simpler cousin of H polish. I actually haven't seen that update yet, Tom. Is that the very next version coming out, or is it already out? I haven't updated my ZBrush in a little bit, so I tend to lag behind on updates because I don't want to deal with like technical problems, especially before a stream. That's like the worst. But yeah, are they? So they're trying to make it like more streamlined or something. I never ended up using the ZBrush for iPad app, so I'm not familiar with that. I did watch a video on it when it first was announced, and it seemed cool, but yeah, I never. I'm just not an iPad user really, so it never really moved the dial for me. But yeah, if it's coming to desktop, that could be interesting. Like, hopefully, it doesn't remove any accessibility. Very simplified. Okay. Is it an opt-in thing, or will everybody be required to use it? All right, now we're going to sharpen this guy, make it feel a little scarier. Maybe we'll adjust a little bit. Now, I still want to do that kind of push in technique we used on the other nail. It still is a little too thick feeling in there, but I think the shape is looking pretty good. Definitely need to do a bunch of work on the finger itself, but yeah. This is also potentially something where, like, if you were somebody who did a lot of creature sculpting, you might have a creature hand sitting around that you could start with. I know there's some folks who kind of leverage their existing library to build off of, which is smart. But for me, I thought this project would be fun to just kind of do everything from scratch and see what we could come up with. You're not sure? Okay, yeah, I'll have to look into that. Thanks for letting me know, though. I am curious if that'll be a requirement, and if it will be, universally thought of as like a improvement on the interface. It's interesting to me because I ZBrush has a lot of power. It's a very feature rich program that I kind of feel like the interface as it is actually pretty streamlined, given that you have so much power. So I'm just curious to see how are they going to give you access to the power while also still simplifying the interface more. It feels like a really difficult challenge, but I'm glad they're thinking about it. Like, certainly if you can make it more accessible to people, that's a good thing. And maybe that's something they're just thinking about from a market perspective is our program is hard for people to get into. It's like high entry barrier there. I mean, I agree it is. It's a very unique, weird piece of software that for people who've never used it, it feels very weird and daunting and difficult to understand. So I think people newer to digital sculpting these days are opting to learn Blender sculpting over ZBrush sculpting, which is fine. But as somebody who kind of knows a lot of the ins and outs of ZBrush, it's really hard to beat the kind of capabilities of ZBrush. So yeah, it's also a price thing, right? Like some people, it just doesn't make sense to pay for ZBrush. They don't use it enough. I mean, hell, I could even maybe be in that boat, but I just like the program too much to ever give it up. I'm too used to the workflow and the features of it. You tried it on iPad, but it didn't stick. Okay, yeah, interesting. I'm sure that's going to be some people, right? Like the format just doesn't quite work for them. You saw some excitement online, but also pride people who don't trust them while doing the ZBrush part of the course. You did try the iPad version and worked pretty well. Okay. A lot of people, not pride people. Oh, got it. Yeah, yeah. No worries. Yeah, I'd definitely be curious to see what that's all about. Sounds interesting. There was a time where this is a very short-lived issue, but it was when I was in the heart of production doing character modeling, and there was an update to ZBrush where whenever you use the spacebar menu, the whole program could freeze and crash on you. There's just the craziest, dumbest bug. And I'm like a chronic spacebar menu user, and so like while we were working on that version of ZBrush, like the whole team just had to be like, basically undoing muscle memory on using this spacebar because most of us used it, and you'd hear occasionally in the office, you know, down in another cubicle, someone go, "Oh, damn it!" You just knew that they pressed the spacebar button. It was actually really funny in retrospect, but frustrating in the moment for sure. I'm glad that we have not seen a bug like that since then. Although on one of my other computers, though, there is a weird thing going on where, like, when I hit the spacebar menu, the position of the spacebar menu in relation to the cursor is not here on the draw size. It's like, I don't even know where it is. It's like somewhere else, which that actually screws up my muscle memory as well because I'm just used to hitting spacebar and just dragging to change my brush size. I think there might be something to do with like it was a version of ZBrush shortly after Maxon acquired them, and I think someone might have just screwed up some kind of weird resolution scaling thing. And so I just need to go and update that version of ZBrush on that machine. I think because the one on this computer obviously doesn't have that issue, and it's the same. I'm using the same sort of monitor format. So, but yeah, it's funny how something little like that can really kind of screw up your flow, screw up your normal cadence of working. In fact, speaking of that, we should probably save. Let's save this. Let's save over that. And then, of course, I have to do a weird minimize and maximize because ZBrush loses pressure sensitivity when I save. We are just talking about quirks. That's a quirk of whatever version I'm working with here. Very bizarre. Tomorrow, I've actually got to do some mock interviews for some students graduating at the college I teach at, which will be fun and interesting to see how that goes. But I think it's really good that we do that because you could have like really great skills, hard skills like technical skills. Your portfolio is great, and then you struggle on the interview, right? And then the impression you leave is weird, and that's always a bummer because it's like, well, you actually would have been a great employee, and you just didn't quite have the right. You didn't leave the right impression. So I'm really glad that we kind of do that stuff. I certainly in college didn't have any like uh, real job prep stuff. It was all portfolio focused, which is fine. Like that's the primary thing. If you don't have a good portfolio, then it's kind of game over. But yeah, there was very little career preparation stuff. There was some stuff talking about freelance and contracts and stuff, so that was kind of good. But yeah, no like mock interviews, none of that. So yeah, I don't know. I like that. I like that that we're doing that. And these are things too that like unfortunately like people who kind of try to learn just from YouTube videos and stuff. It's really funny because here I am on YouTube like but I don't angle my channel as like a learning channel necessarily. It's more of like a hangout channel and a product review channel. And I did that specifically because um, there's just a ton of people doing like learning content on YouTube, and I think they do it well. Um, And but I think also just it's a little hard to get across all the like the nuance sometimes in a short form video. Like a lot of the stuff that does well on YouTube is the stuff that is clickbaity and sometimes rage bait and things that pass themselves off as like, here's this one secret tip that you didn't know. And I think, my first video, which was like, you're holding your tool wrong. It is a little like that, right? But it felt relevant because I was going to start talking about like tools that I like using. So that one I think seemed logical to me. But yeah, when you get into this rhythm though, where you're like, every one of my learning videos has to sort of claim that I have some one secret that you haven't heard about that's going to unlock everything for you. That sounds exhausting to me. Like I just can't see that being sustainable. And I think there's a lot of value in being mentored by somebody where you can like show them your work and get feedback and be in a community, and just there's just all those things that I think are kind of part of it. And it can't just be like, I saw this guy on YouTube tell me this one pro secret and now I'm a badass or whatever. Like it just doesn't work like that. Um, and then you just got a lot of people that think that it can work like that, and then they're wondering why they can't get a job. And it's like, well, I hate to tell you, but that guy that shared with you that one pro secret, he also has like, 1,000 other things that he knows that you don't know that are not in that YouTube video. So yeah, it's just tricky. You just got to kind of figure out how to navigate making content that you like believe in, and it's not an easy space. It's not an easy space. There's a lot of crowded spaces these days. But that's also why I have a tabletop company, because I like physical products and I like where people can kind of disengage from the internet for a while and just hang out with friends, not be in front of a screen all the time. Okay, so that's kind of looking cool. I feel like we've got a pretty reasonable stab there. I'm going to add a little bit of striation to this nail, and then I think we can maybe reasonably move on to the next finger. Yeah, at CGS. Yeah, yeah, it's the part of our degree program is because the degree program is just a little more robust. Um, it's more expensive as you'd imagine, but like that one, there's like some career prep stuff, mock interview. Um, it's kind of part of the part of the requirements, but logical requirements to giving someone like an actual degree versus just like a sort of a certificate, right? And some people want that. I do think that there's value in that, and I think one of those things is things like mock interviews and some of the just the rigor that goes into like an accredited program can be beneficial, but it's not for everybody. And some people just want to get in and just know, hey, give me the core skills and help me get on with my life, kind of thing, and they don't care about that aspect. So yeah, the school kind of tries to offer a couple different routes depending on like your personal goals and stuff. Okay, and maybe we just kind of change this thickness a little bit here. I feel like we're getting a little thick on that end points. Yeah, there we go. Okay, cool. That looks like a pretty evil looking finger there. Let's scope it out in the context of the whole hand. Yeah, that's looking cool. If we can kind of envision the other fingers being of a similar caliber, I think we'll be getting in a pretty reasonable spot there. It's good to have a change of pace in the art YouTube community. Yeah, I agree. I think it's nice to have, some different options there. Brandon didn't give you the interviews. Yeah, yeah. You probably went through the like the career track program, which was the certificate program, which is kind of more of like an accelerated, a little more like lean program. It's just kind of focusing on like just this kind of specific core skills. The degree program has a whole like kind of additional component to it that is just stuff that we have to design with accreditation bodies because they need to see like a certain amount of topics covered with certain levels of detail and whatnot. And then we partner with other universities as well. So like I'm not sure how many of these are public yet, but just in general, we occasionally partner with other universities that kind of already have an established accredited school, and then but they want to kind of enhance their curriculum with some of what we develop. So we'll kind of partner with them, and that I think can be another really good option for certain people in certain regions and stuff because they can get financial aid for their schooling through whatever country that they're in, whether it's like Australia or the US or UK. I anticipate we'll probably be looking at Canada at some point, which I think is also great. So yeah, just kind of slow and steady. I mean, we're a small school, and we're kind of all about quality over quantity kind of thing. So, but that's always a trick, right? Because it's like, well, sometimes people haven't heard of us and they want to know more, and so we have to kind of like guide them through how it works and stuff. But yeah, it's a fun challenge. Okay, let's see. Let's carve that nail in. That's always, I think, a good first step. And we'll go right about here with it. Sure. And this is where the bone is centered, so let's go kind of right there with the nail and connect this up. It always looks a little questionable when it's in this form. Don't worry, guys. We're not doing anything X-rated here. This is supposed to be a finger and a nail. Get your head out of the gutter, guys. Are you guys working on anything cool? Any fun projects going on out there? I mean, some of you probably working on stuff you can't talk about, but yeah, hopefully you got some cool stuff going on. All right, we got the nail blocked in. Polish up this fingertip here. Be really curious to see how crazy we can get some of this fun detail here in these areas. I have this vision of like being able to show the foot like touching the ground, like it's stepping forward and us seeing close up of the foot. And so I have this desire to maybe get kind of detailed with the foot, and maybe whoever rigs this, like maybe we can get some compression on the skin of the foot would be nice detail. Um, so I'm going to try to push the detail there. Yeah, I guess we could maybe do something with the hand as well, but the foot is one thing I was thinking of. Maybe a close up would be cool there. We could definitely maybe use some sculptress to bring in some really crazy like alpha work, some skin details and stuff. That'll be cool. Your figure drawing? That's awesome. And another project next week? Dude, that's awesome. You're doing some characters for your current CGSTA challenge. Nice. Always fun to do some character stuff. You're also doing some figure stuff. Nice. Yeah. That's a good it's a good option. Figure stuff is always pretty high value. You never draw too many people, you know. You started sculpting a little today, but only because you wanted to get more into hand painted textures. So sculpting isn't necessarily the goal. Okay, yeah. Taking some time to do some experimentation is also really awesome. I'll do that sometimes with like brush sets in Photoshop. I'll have like a day where I'm like, okay, let's just evaluate, do I like everything I'm using? Is there some areas where I feel like I could be doing something a little better or different? And I just go trying different people's sets, seeing how they're working. And yeah, sometimes I come out of it with a tweaked tool or brush, and then I end up really liking it. But it's, sometimes hard to bring that into your flow when there's so much focus on just producing content, right? Like, when do I have time to just play and noodle and experiment? But I try to like segment my time in a way that helps me do multiple things. So I'll try to, and this is not everybody has the luxury to be this organized, but I can say something like, well, Friday nights is when I do X, or for me, Thursday nights is when I do the stream. So it's like, okay, that's the little time that I've blocked out for that. And I can figure out what I want to do as part of the stream. Saturdays is when I work on some of my personal project with my buddies. Sunday is a freelance day. Like, yeah, you could just kind of, I mean, however it works for you. But sometimes for me, it helps to like, you kind of like segment a specific time and say, this is when I'm going to kind of do this. And because as artists, you probably know it's like, you tend to feel like you're spinning a lot of plates and there's a lot of priorities and stuff, and it just gets a little overwhelming. And not every project can be or should be and trying to address multiple things. That usually means that it's going to look kind of muddy and disjointed. So I have this problem a lot where I have to try to be specific about the goal of a project and make sure that that goal is narrow enough to be reasonable to hit. Because I'm just an idea person. I'll go into something and I'll be like, yeah, I want to get better at doing this environment mood, and then but I also want to work on like my robotic designs, and it's like those don't have to be the same image. Maybe it's better to just do those as two separate images. You can always live to paint another day, to draw another scene. fine. And we got some clay buildup stuff here. Let's smooth that out. Let's come in with Damien Standard and shape that a little more organically. That one's maybe a little symmetrical looking for my liking, but we'll leave it for variety's sake. I just love doing all these weird like wrinkles and stuff. It's like really fun. The details. I just tend to be like a detail person. And some unintended noise though in these middle sections. I don't want that. So we'll simplify there. All right, now we'll just do a final adjustment on thickness. Pull this in a little bit. Get a nice kind of taper. Okay, and finger 3 completed. Now finger 4 is going to be maybe it'll be a little trickier. I think it'll be fine, but we've got this idea of like a really long fingernail on the index finger, which is a fun little thing that I like to do sometimes on creatures. So we'll just have to kind of navigate that long nail, but yeah, otherwise that's feeling like that's pretty good. Feeling of progress there. Maybe we can get a little bit of detail on some of the hand masses here. I kind of want there to be maybe a little form in here. Let's see if we can make this work. So it's like a hand bone there. A hand bone, not a ham bone. Although it'd be tastier maybe. But yeah. I'm doing this thing here where I'm kind of like doing this weird fusion thing, which I think is kind of interesting. I just want to make sure that it doesn't feel too distracting. It's maybe a little loud. I might turn. Well, no, I kind of like it though. At the same time, well, we'll leave it. I'm being a little daring with some of those choices there, but it might be okay. I want to get some segmentation to this heel of the hand here. So let's kind of maybe do a little bit of like a selective inflate to give ourselves some fun shapes to work with here. Do this shape here. If you're doing like animal paws or something, this is like a really just awesome way to quickly get some of those shapes in. I And then we just got to get in there and kind of like bridge the forms together, make sure they feel like they're integrated well. It can kind of help make an area that maybe feels a little bit sort of undesigned feel like it's got some information going on, and kind of springboards some ideas like, okay, now we've got this like fun little like overlap of skin here that's like, I don't know if I would have thought to do that before, but I kind of like that weird thing going on there. And I think there's a little bit of a kind of an armor plated vibe to this guy's anatomy, like that he feels kind of, there's a solidness to it that like this kind of weird exoskeleton-y rib cage thing, which is this, a lot of these details are directly inspired by the original art from Mark Tedden, of course. But building a sculpture detailed like this out of it, of course, requires a little bit more in-depth resolving of these ideas. Because in the original, you don't see his hands at all. In fact, you don't even know that he has hands. And the upper part of the wings here don't turn into hands like this. They're just sort of like little stalks. And I would show it, but I'm nervous. It's why I tend to be kind of, I'm careful about showing reference on the channel because I don't know what the copyright stuff is for some of this stuff, and I don't want to get a strike for it. But you could just go look up Magic the Gathering Lord of the Pit Alpha, and you'll see the art I'm talking about. It only shows a very small part of the character, and I just kind of conceptualized the rest of it, and had to sort of envision how it would work logically as a functioning creature, because it's just, there's a little bit of abstraction there given that it's a truncated shot, and there's some compression of the forms, and we just don't see a lot of areas. Like I think the arms are cut off kind of here at the bicep area, and then it just turns into like some wings that overlap. So there was definitely a decision I had to make about, does he have a lower part of his arm? And I just thought he probably does, and I can envision that they're sort of tucked behind the wings. And so yeah, unfortunately, like there's just no image for what his hands would look like. We just don't know if he even has them. So there's a lot of I guess there's a lot of sort of creative license being utilized here, but hopefully it just feels like in the spirit of what we do see in the image. And again, I kind of get the sense that like, his anatomy, he's got kind of a fleshy, weird anatomy, and I just don't imagine that something with that sort of fleshy anatomy would be as as fragile as a human. Like there would be some kind of like extra sort of regenerative property, or defensive quality, armored like quality to that organic aspect there. So I kind of am riffing off that a little bit with these design choices. Okay, this is a little weird here. Let's see if we can adjust that shape. There we go. You've been playing around with Unreal for environments to paint over them. That's an awesome idea. Yeah, I mean, Unreal is super powerful. Unreal 5, and just the lighting and all the stuff you can kit bash in there. They've got all of the natural terrain stuff you can paint with, and yeah, it's super powerful. And look dev is so critical in games and film. Like it's one of those that they always need those kind of people, and I think they I think there's like a limited number of people that do it well, and so I think that's an interesting space to pursue for a career in entertainment is look dev, where you're really looking at sort of the broad strokes of a world and of a space. I was just talking to a student today about that he seemed like he had a good eye for that kind of information and detail, and so I was kind of encouraging him to like be open to exploring a little bit of that. So there's a lot of people who are into characters, and that's like all they do is just characters, and I mean that's great. Like do what you're passionate about. Um, but if you feel like you've got an appetite for some of those sort of harder to find skill sets out there, that could be an interesting option. Yeah. This eye, unfortunately, we're just gonna have to wait till we upres because it's just not gonna be able to get as clean as I would want it to. Now there's a question about, what do we do sculpting wise with the eye here? Like do we actually start to define um some kind of information? And I think the answer is I think I'm okay with maybe defining like a little bit of the pupil shape here. But I'm just trying to think about it from the perspective of like how does it work as a sculpture, and then how does it work as a real asset in Unreal? And mm, yeah, I think we can probably yeah, it gets weird. I'll have to look at it. I want to see how people are constructing realistic eyeballs these days, like what the latest and greatest method people like is for that. Because I kind of have my ways, but I think they're a little last gen in how I'd approach it, and that stuff is just evolving so fast, right? Like shaders and all that. So I want to just double check and see how do people like building hyper realistic eyes for Unreal, and is it like a multi layered mesh, or is it just some shader stuff going on? But as a sculpture, though, I think we can maybe just at least have some indication of like a pupil shape there, and then if we have to paint that out of the normal map because we're doing something else with it in Unreal, then I think that that's not a big deal to do that. But yeah, the cleanliness of some of the stuff here and the details of the wrinkles, we'll just have to wait till we subdivide again to get anything a little bit better there. But what I will do is I might just pinch this edge a little bit because I think they'll at least give a little bit of the illusion of a cleaner, higher poly sculpt in this area. And then when we subdivide, we can. That might feel a little too sharp for it being an eyelid. I'm going to just kind of ease up on that a little bit. But yeah, I think just sharpening that edge a little bit can help it with some of the low res vibes it's giving. I mean, what you're essentially doing when you pinch an edge like this is you're just bunching the edge loops, right? And so you're basically telling it, "Hey, I need more information here at the transition than I do in this inner area that's flat." And so that can also be good in preparation for when you subdivide again, because it's going to kind of know where to allocate things. And I wanted there to be like a fairly significant lip to the lid to give room for the eyeball to feel dome like. And so the finishing touch here, I think, at least at this level of subdivision, is that we just isolate the eyeball and then make sure we pull it out enough so that it feels like it's, you know, spherical sitting inside the socket. So let's do that now. Let's go ahead and use the move tool. And let's pull this out. I think we can fudge this just a little bit, and there is a world where maybe it made sense to just put an actual spherical object in the hand like this. It's definitely, I think, plenty of great reasons to do that. But yeah, I think we just decided to kind of go a different route with it. And then maybe the lower lid wants to be a little bit thicker. So let's go ahead and pull that out as well. Okay, so whoops, let's get. I'm gonna make you guys seasick with all the spinning action going on. All right, so there's the quick distant read on those. So cool. All right, I feel like that's giving us some cool stuff. Might shift this palm contour ever so slightly this way. Okay, yep. And I think it's time for that index finger. You know what I'm sad about is I forgot to grab my can of sparkling water before I started streaming. So, but I've got some hot tea here that I think is doing a pretty good job. And maybe more seasonally appropriate anyway. Do you guys like tea? Do you guys drink tea at all? I'm kind of a tea drinker. Also, because I can't do coffee because I can't do caffeine or the acid. Both those things do not agree with me very well. But tea, yeah, definitely. Herbal teas and stuff really are awesome. Okay, get some definition there. And now we want that. Oh man, crazy nail on this one. This will be fun. Let's get that kind of center line established here. So probably want the nail to maybe start maybe kind of around here. And kind of arc that around like that. Maybe we'll go a little more extreme with it like this. And go like that. Okay, so now we've got our silly, like, you know, cone, bad Halloween costume fingernail blocked in, and then we'll make it look a little more convincing in a moment. You're a fan of Topo Chico, dude? Nice, yes. The ultimate in carbonated bite. Yeah, that's definitely. I'm a fan of that one as well. If I really want that heavy carbonation, that is always the answer. I've got a case of that downstairs, the glass bottles. Okay, now to cut this in and get the nail feeling thinner. Oh, they really? They sell out where you're at? Okay, yeah, maybe. Is it maybe they don't stock enough of them? It's the carbonated beverage space is a pretty competitive space. Like there's a lot of people doing that these days, and I think Topo Chico, like, luckily, is a pretty well known brand or well known name in that space. But you've got so many, like you've got Polar and Waterloo, and any grocery chain has their own variation of it, and I usually like Spindrift is the one that I tend to go to. I'm pretty picky with the flavor, but I tend to like their stuff. Has a little bit of juice in there. The sparkling water purists are always quick to say that Spindrift is not sparkling water because it has some juice in it, and I get that. I understand what they're going for there, but it's close enough for me. So this is like prime reason why Lord of the Pit can't work at a call center because he's going to have trouble operating the phones with this nail. Oh yeah, Liquid Death. I forgot about them. Yeah, yeah, those seem to be pretty popular too. I think there wasn't their first foray just simply like bottled water but in a can. I feel like that was like they had this weird kind of unique take on the industry and then they kind of branched. Could be wrong. Here I'm just going to kind of H polish away. Actually, let's go down on res. I think this nail got a little bit kind of uh, a little too random and doughy. Smooth that out a bit. Step up, smooth again. Step up. Okay, better. Okay, I think we should probably use the move tool here to push this in more. It's kind of been our strategy all along and no reason to stop here. So we'll just push that in a little bit more. Nice. That was the basis. Yeah, I tend to think that they had some kind of base water product first, and then they kind of went into like the flavored stuff. All right, that's looking pretty good. I like this little like slight curl to the end of the nail. That looks pretty Pretty wicked, pretty dangerous. So we'll leave that. And now let's work on the finger itself here. I think just need a little bit more finesse in some of this stuff. Sort of like that little V shape I'm doing there. I kind of wish I'd done that on some of the other fingers. I might go back and implement that little fold. I think that looks cool. I mean, it's probably easy to overdo it, but yeah, it's a cool feel to it. Okay. Let's do some striations here in the nail. Maybe I'll put a random little ding, little damage on this one because it's a longer nail. Cool. Okay, let's view it in the grand scheme of things. We got to do a little bit of polish on these knuckles here. They're looking a little too clay buildup-y. Not that that is always bad. I think you can if you're careful with it, you can definitely kind of expose some of the clay buildup brush in the final result, but it tends to always require a little bit of that finesse to get it to feel like it fully belongs. Unless you're doing something that is intended to look sort of like clay, like that it stays looking like a sculpture, and then you're in a different sort of zone with it. So I'm just kind of like thinking about how to get some of this skin to feel stretchy, and I just want to kind of pull in a little bit more of that stretchiness there. I kind of like that he has like these sort of big chunky knuckles. I think it's just fitting his sort of vibes. Some of this detail down. Okay, and can we maybe detail there. Maybe just a little bit more definition on this muscle here. Probably want to pinch this area actually. Let's clay buildup. Actually, what are we working with here in terms of topology? Okay, there's definitely a pretty big gap there. So let's fill that in a bit. Yeah, no worries, dude. Have a good one, and yeah, hopefully we'll see you again soon. Okay, let's see. Pinch. Yeah, pinch is what I want here. Let's pinch this element together. Could also inflate too. Those both kind of work to bring that area to a smaller gap, and then I want to kind of start to define this section out because I want to bring. Actually, I should probably look and see the clearance of this with the wing. I think we're totally fine. Yeah, I don't have to worry about it. I want to bring in some of these like spines kind of protruding out of the forearm here, kind of like we have going along the elbow, which we have to do some work back here as well. But yeah, I think the hands, though, generally looking like they're in a pretty good spot. Okay, so let's bring this detail down here like this. I think we're getting pretty good flow here. And now let's go ahead and I guess we'll just use the move tool. I don't really want these to be giant spikes. Otherwise, I would have built them into the base. I'm just going to kind of create a little bit of a protrusion here. Or as Michael Scott would say, a protuberance. And then we'll, oops, let's go from there. And then a little tiny one here. Yeah. Okay. I think that's probably as much as I want now. Of course, we're going to go in and kind of finesse that, but yeah, didn't want to do anything too crazy with the silhouette there. I kind of like the flow we've got. So define this. Here again, we're up against a little bit of resolution challenge, but not too bad. All right, now we're going to do a little muscle definition with masking. So I'm going to try to take this little shape here, kind of craft the muscle shape that I want. Make it a little skinnier on this end here. Okay, so that feels like a pretty good, pretty good muscle shape. So invert and inflate, and then just hit it. Okay, there's the muscle. Now we can smooth out the edges, integrate that a little bit better. Definitely at the beginning and end points, right? Where it kind of like sinks in and like connects with the bone, maybe, or whatever. It's a really interesting deep cut there, which is like mostly working for me. I think that's not too bad. Maybe I'll get a little more definition there. Maybe we kind of define that there. Reduce that. Kind of pull those hand tendons up a little higher into the forearm. It's fun inventing anatomy like that I don't have to feel bound to the human configuration, that I can just sort of, evoke function, but just get a little creative with some of the layout here. A little bit too much sort of undulation to the surface. I need to go into the lower poly and kind of alleviate that ripple. Kind of coax it into place with a little bit of selective clay buildup. Check it from profile view. And some of this kind of attention to these details are things that can help your sculpts differentiate from more of the kind of amateur effect, because you just notice a lot of sort of like weird rippling, and like like this stuff in here is an example of the stuff that like looks amateur. So I'm going to go in there and go into a lower sub D, hit that with the smooth tool, and clay buildup where there's like a depression that's feeling a little bit weird. Step up in subdivision, smooth again. Step up, smooth again. It gives it this feeling like you had sort of carefully built the mesh from a base that was like considering all of the subforms. And then that area will be great to receive high frequency detail later when we come in with the alphas and everything. That area right there feels really weird. Okay, let's fix that. Okay, better. when I'm thinking about it, these anatomy shapes and stuff, I do think about flow, I think about function, but in some ways, it almost feels like you're working on like like a sports car body or something, like the way that you want things to feel like they lead your eye through. We're not focused on aerodynamics the way car design would be, but I think there's definitely some crossover in design philosophy there. And then I might just pinch this little area because it's feeling like the gap is a little too wide there. And we'll just smooth it out a little bit. Okay, let's H polish the ends of these little spikes a bit, give them kind of a bony quality. Helps them feel like a different type of surface than the rest of this area. Kind of like when you guys are designing characters and you hear about how to add interest with material variety. I mean, it's the same thing here. We're integrating material variety, but we're thinking about how the shapes of the surface can give it a more convincing sense that it is a different material. A harder material will capture finer edges, right? Like a melty stick of butter, and you put a cut in a melty stick of butter. It's like this big sort of doughy, splayed open chasm in the butter. Whereas if you were to take a knife to like a block of ice, it's like this like razor thin slice, right? We pick up on that stuff when we see those details. They're clues as to how hard is the surface. Okay, so let's see. That I think is looking pretty reasonable. All sides there. Okay, so I think we can go into kind of like this area back here. And really, I think it's mostly just some clarity in the transition points here. We got a little bit of a spiraling issue there. That's fine. We can just kind of give it another lip. Make sure we have some striations there. And I think I'll do the H polish on these as well to help them feel more kind of bony. We didn't really do that much on the fingernails, and I think it's just because they're so small and thin. But maybe we could try that as well there and see if we like the results. It's worth a shot. Ooh, I really like some of the weird asymmetry of these details in here. It's really fun looking. And this we can see there's some weird modeling cheese going on there. So let's get this cleaned up here. There we go. That was looking really, really funky. And of course, when you smooth, you sometimes lose critical volume. So we'll have to just extend this a little bit again. Not a big deal. Okay, now let's try that H polish we were doing because I did like how that was feeling. Kind of facet some of this stuff a bit. Not that much though. Yeah. That's definitely giving me the right vibes. I actually did a little bit of this in the rib cage as well. That I think maybe next time we'll see because I'll get into more of the torso. Oh, there's actually a place for some good detail in there. Let's go back to Damien Standard and hit some spots in here. Okay, back to H polish. I did do H polishing on the horns on his head, so I think we're good there. I've also got some cool like bone brushes that I got from I think it was ArtStation that are good for some high frequency detail and damage and stuff. So what I haven't decided yet is how if I'm going to need asymmetry in this design or not. I think if we're going for like cinematic movie quality, we would be forced to do asymmetry. So I mean that might be the sort of helpful deciding factor there is that we want to be kind of cinematic about it. But it might be fine having the asymmetry only in like uh things along the center line of the body and maybe more centered on the head versus feeling like you have to go into every part of the body and do asymmetry. I feel like that might be kind of overkill, so kind of maybe do it strategically in selective spots. But see, a few of those kind of chiseled edges immediately help it feel like this is bony compared to everything kind of around the base there. Obviously, if you're doing mechanical or robotic hard surface stuff, H polish is a huge friend in that process as well. And I like doing tech in ZBrush too because it's something that can feel a little tedious when you're doing it in 2D, you know, getting all the precision angles and perspective of everything. But these days, often if I need to draw a complex mechanical shape in perspective, I'll just make a very simple base mesh in Blender and then just rotate it, take a screenshot, and then just paint over it. Kind of shortcut a little bit of that. Like I'm working on a piece right now, freelance, that character has a very iconic gun, and the gun is a big part of the image, and I got to show different options and things like that. So it's like, all right, well, I'm just gonna create a quick base mesh in Blender, and then I can pose it, and I can integrate that in. And I use a plugin for Blender called Quick Shape, and I also use another one called Quick Texture. They're both by the same person, and they just make it very fast to build a base mesh. It's not good if you need to be making like in-game 3D assets. It's not. It doesn't create clean enough geometry, but it's intended for conceptual art where it's like the basis that you would use as a reference or as a paint over to work on top of, or you could maybe build it and then maybe remesh it in ZBrush and then sculpt it into something that could be usable. That seems fine as well, but primarily more as like a conceptual tool, and it's great for that. Like the gun that I needed Again, I don't need it to be like a photoreal model. It just needs to have all of the base primitives so that I can rotate it and see how it might look in different angles. And the model took me like, I don't know, 15 minutes and will probably save me, a couple hours of time if I had gotten on there and had to like noodle on it. So definitely worth it. And these are those hybrid workflows that all the pros use, and why companies, are always on the lookout for seniors, because they know that seniors are like versed in these different hybrid workflows and that they can be strategic and problem solving. So, if you're watching this and you're like, junior level, trying to break in, whatever, uh, just think a little bit about, can you be strategic in your approach? Can you save yourself some time with just a little bit of a workflow change? So here I'm just kind of inflating this because I felt like it was not really feeling like a volumetric muscle. It was feeling kind of flat and weird. So I'm gonna smooth it out a little bit, help it integrate. Yep, there we go. Cool. Well, yeah, I think I'm not in love with this. Maybe just smooth that out a little bit there. It needs to be a little more softer transition there. Probably some of this stuff could be a little softer in terms of transition, but I think we got basically the arm in a pretty good spot with maybe a few things that I'll maybe post stream before next time. I'll just do a little bit of cleanup in here, but I think the arm is in a pretty good spot. And so next time we probably get to resolving some of the back here. Now, the thing about the back is that we have limited view of it. When you turn the wings on, you can see the wings, the membrane of the wings intersect right alongside the trapezius muscles here and down the spinal column. So we don't get a great view of some of this stuff, which is a little sad actually, because I kind of like some of the shape invention we've got going on in here in this midsection. But because I'm a weird completionist, even though we may not see some of this stuff, I'm still going to probably try to get it feeling reasonably defined. Because I mean, yeah, if I post some images of the sculpt, I think I'd also just like to be able to show the sculpt without the wings and have it look, like it's not an unfinished sort of idea. So I think we'll at least work to have it reasonably resolved. Again, it may not be quite as clean as something like the hands or fingers or the face or something, but I think it just deserves at least a quick pass to help it feel more complete. So then we'll have had a good pass on these arms, the secondary wing arms, his main arms, his head, his rib cage, upper torso. I'm working on some of the midsection here. So we'll do some of the back next time, and then if we can get through that, we'll work on all the pelvis area, and then we can start getting into the legs, which I think the legs will go faster than the hands or the arms, because there are no hands, there are no like toes. I think there's still amount of work to be done to get these looking cool, but then we'll have the tail that we need to just get in there and define a little bit better. We got some good big shapes happening, but it needs just a little bit more finesse. Get the glutes cleaned up as well. And then once we get through that, then we'll do the wings, which that is no small task. There's a lot there, but I think that's one of those where we just kind of get into a groove, um, and I think we can carve through it fairly quickly. There's not a lot of unknowns there. It's just sort of detail that we have to just get in and define. So I think we can get into kind of a flow state with that, work through that pretty quickly. The back of the wings are simpler than the front of the wings. And here I'm going to kind of lean a little bit more on high frequency detail in sort of overlays and stuff to get some skin texture. Not as much sort of like medium sculpting information needed on the back of the wings. I mean, we'll have to do some here where the these bones kind of splay out into these hand-like bony protrusions. So this is probably where the majority of the work will happen is in these kind of endpoints here. I guess you guys can't see that fully. Yeah, so these endpoints here. But yeah, that's I think some of the things coming up for this guy. And then once we get through the base sculpting, then of course we'll get in here. We'll subdivide again, and we'll turn on Sculptress, and we'll start to like drag out all of the high frequency details, some of the weird like damage, and you know, any of the kind of grotesque skin features that we want. If there's some like weird scars and stuff like that, that'll all come at that stage, which is where it starts to go from feeling like maybe like more of a toy, like a high res toy, and it starts to transition into something that feels more like a real creature that you'd see in a cinematic. Of course, when we get into substance and we start adding like all the colors and the specularity and everything, and we start seeing it with photoreal lighting, that's where stuff's going to get real crazy. And damn, I'm so excited to get to that phase, but like we just got to take our time. We got to make sure all this stuff works out because you know, if we rush any of this stuff, you know, it's the whole lipstick on a pig phrase, right? Like we don't want to be dolling up this thing that has fundamental flaws, that the forms don't make sense or the anatomy is weird, or there's areas that have just been neglected, that you know, the shapes look poorly conceived from certain angles. We don't want to have any of that. We want the sculpture to feel solid on its own, and that everything that we do after that point is just making it more solid. So we'll just have to have some patience with that. But it's been such a fun project so far. I don't see myself actually getting uh, fatigued at all by this, but I also just have a background in doing high res sculpture. So I guess I have like a little bit of an endurance factor when it comes to this kind of thing. I'm totally fine getting lost in some of these details. So, yeah, guys, that's I think going to be the stream tonight. But it was fun chatting with everybody, and hopefully we'll see you again soon. And we'll keep working on this guy. So, have an awesome week, and we'll see you next time. Take care, everybody. Hey, and don't forget to subscribe and like all that stuff. All right, we'll see you. Bye.